Hello everybody, my name is Heather and today we are here to do my April reading wrap up. Before we jump into talking about all of the books I read and DNF'd and the kind of reading month I have, I did want to show you guys a really cool nifty gadget for readers. This company did reach out to me, but they are not paying me to talk about this. They were just like, if you like it, you can mention it on your channel. And I do happen to like it a lot. I have been using it for my book club reads over the last month. But this right here is the VYU digital highlighter. And what this highlighter will do is you just use it. You can highlight like you normally would, but it's going to save all of your highlights to an app on your phone. So if you're somebody that switches between Kindle and physical books, or if you are trying to not mark up like a special edition copy of something, you don't want to have tabs sticking out of your special edition sprayed edges, this will keep track of all of your highlights for you. I do have a code for the iMark digital highlighter that will save you 5% off of any existing promotion. So you can find the link to the digital highlighter as well as my code down in the description box below. I hope that you'll check it out. It is really a phenomenal product that keeps you from damaging your special editions. What more could we want as readers? I am going to be upfront and honest with you guys. I intentionally allowed April to be a very slow, go with the flow, no buy reading month for myself. And with those goals, I completed them, but it's not going to be a very excited book-filled wrap-up for you. So know that going in, but I am proud of myself for sticking to all of my goals. Didn't buy a single book, read a ton of backlist books, and didn't stress myself out or pressure myself to read anything I wasn't in the mood for. So in April, I read 5 books total, and I also read 2 books that I ended up DNFing. I want to talk about the DNFs first and just kind of get the bad news out of the way. So the first one is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I've owned this book for forever, since pre-COVID. And it was one of those books that was on a Barnes & Noble table, buy one, get one 50% off. And I was like, well, I can save money, which essentially is not saving money because I wouldn't have spent the extra 50%, but I digress. When the spinner wheel landed on this one, I instantly knew I wasn't in the mood for it. And I also knew down in my heart that I have not been in the mood for this book in the 5 or 6 years that I've had it. And so it needs to go on the donate pile. I hope somebody really picks it up that's going to love it, but it wasn't for me. It's never been for me, so I am saying goodbye to it. The other book that I ended up DNFing might come as a shock to people who really liked this book, but that is Heavenly Bodies by Amani Eru. I was very excited for this one. I thought finally a romantasy that might work for me, but it didn't. This book follows a princess who's been kidnapped from her kingdom where it is perpetually night. She is kidnapped by a kingdom where it is perpetually day, and she is going to be tasked to use her magic to kill a star. She is being trained by the king's son, and as you do in a romantasy, these two are probably going to fall for each other. I'm going to be honest and say I never got to the point where they fell for each other or that I believed that they could fall for each other, but I didn't feel like the characters were fully realized people. And so when we were encouraging them to be a couple, I'm like, I don't even believe in them as a person, so how am I going to believe in them as like a romantic duo? And not only that, there were clunky sentences in here, and there were also terminology phrases used that aren't real. And when people start to use terminology in a subject that I actually know something about, and I'm like, that's not even a word, like that's not even a body part of this animal that you're talking about, I just can't stick with it. And so I DNF'd this at 150 pages. Let me know if you guys want me to reopen my Pango bookstore. I got a little bogged down by it last year, but if we want to see some of these books show up on my bookstore and there are people that are actually interested in them, I will do that. If not, I will donate these to my used bookstore, and hopefully somebody will get them that will love them and cherish them and fly through the pages, but it's not for me. The first book that I actually read and finished in April was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I am a Jurassic Park fan. I love all of the movies. I will go see every single movie in the Jurassic Park franchise that comes out, but I've always been a little bit tentative of the book. When my friend Elise over at Literally Elise asked me to co-host her science fiction book club, which is called the Libernauts Book Club, and presented a couple of options of books I could pick from, my eyes instantly went to Jurassic Park. So I have been excited to read this one since she asked me about it. And if you love the movie, there is nothing to be scared of about the book. It is just as exciting, just as thrilling, and dare I say magical as the movie is. Like the feeling that you got when you watched Jurassic Park for the first time and you saw the dinosaurs, that's how you feel in the book. And you just feel so bad for these creatures who are just existing, just being themselves, and what they go through because of humanity's dumb decisions. It breaks your heart. This book is gory. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that out there. There's a lot of talk of intestines. So know that. You're gonna see some intestines when you're reading this book. But I loved it. It was near perfect for me. I gave it a 4.5 and I am really looking forward to getting into the Lost World. There's also a whole mathematics element of this book, and if you know me, I'm a 7th grade math teacher. I love anything that can make math exciting, and this book did that. And I just this is going to be one of those booktube memories that sticks with me because me and Elise had a really good discussion about it, and I loved it. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. Like, new favorite for sure. The next book that I read was The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, and I really liked this one. I can see why this series and this book in particular would not work for people. I'm sure that there's people that pick this one up, have opinions about it, and then don't continue in the series because this is all vibes, all characters, and like this much plot. We are dumped in this fictional kingdom where a bunch of different characters from a bunch of different backgrounds come together, and we don't really know the whole point of why they are there. We are following Glokta, who is probably one of my favorite fantasy characters now. He is a torturer for the King's Inquisition, who in his past has also been tortured. So that's a really interesting element. Like, seeing a character doing something to other people that also ruined his life is a vibe. We're also following this spoiled brat kid named Giselle, whose dad basically bought him a captainship in the king's army, and he is training to participate in this swordsmanship duel, and you really get quite annoyed at him, but I think there are big things coming for him in future books, so I'm curious about him. And we're following another character named Logan Ninefingers, who is a warrior from the north. He does not fit in this city at all, and he has been kind of recruited by a wizard to come with him and assist him in something that the wizard needs in this big hustling, bustling kingdom. We don't know why they needed to meet up with each other, but they did. The interactions and the character work in this book were so good. There were times the politics went a little bit whoop over my head, but that is typical of me. It's hard for me to follow politics, and it's hard for me to follow battle scenes, but I loved this book, and I'm very excited to eventually get to the sequel, which I already own, and it has been on my TBR cart for several years now. Oops. I gave The Blade Itself a 4.5. Another book that was picked for me by my spinner wheel is Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. This is a book I was excited about because I do love the Shakespeare play Macbeth. I have personal experience being in scenes from that play, and it's just one that has a very nostalgic spot in my heart. This is an interesting book though, because while we think we are getting Lady Macbeth's story and POV from the events of that play, you could have swapped out the name and called her anything else, and you would not know that this was a Macbeth retelling. It is a feminine rage story, but it's a quiet feminine rage story. She is married off to this man, this Scottish lord, who she really has no desire to be married to. In fact, she's a little bit scared and intimidated by him. But we watch our main character, her name is Rosil. We watch her as she quietly manipulates and maneuvers political things in her husband's wake. So there is the big event that you expect to come, knowing that this is about Lady Macbeth, but it wasn't the biggest point of the book. I think the biggest point of the book was just women can have quiet power too. It's hard for me to talk about the plot of this without giving things from Macbeth away, but also it's hard for me to talk about anything that went on in this book because at the same time you're kind of like, what did go on in this book? It was good. It wasn't great. I am excited to get to more of Ava Reid's writing. I have a couple of her other books, and her writing is spectacular. I just this book felt a little bit meandery. I still gave it a 3.5, but it was not a perfect book. The next book I read was also a chunker and a continuation of a series, and that is Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent. Daughter of No Worlds, one of my favorite books of all time. We are following Tasana, who is a slave, and she finally earns her freedom and escapes to a place called the Towers that can teach her how to use her magic. She's been using it, but she doesn't really understand it. And when she arrives at the Towers, she learns that she has to participate in an apprenticeship. And there is only one mentor left. It's this guy named Max. He's a retired warrior. He doesn't care about fighting anymore, and he just wants to be a hermit in his cabin and grow his plants in his garden. But he reluctantly agrees tries to mentor Tisana. There is almost a horror element of the first book that does continue on in the second book, and my favorite thing about the first book was the slow acquaintances to friendship to lovers romance that Max and Tisana had, and the moments that they had together in this like quiet training segment of the first book were some of my favorite romantic moments of all time. So when I picked up the second book and we were dealing with some separation of our main characters, we were dealing with a lot of battle talk, which I told you earlier in this video can be hard for me to follow. I kind of struggled for, I would say, about 40% of the story. But by the time things got settled in and I understood why there was a third POV that we didn't have in the first book here, I really did settle into the story and finally found my footing with it. I'm excited to continue on to the third book and finish this series with the original covers. I won't say too much about that. There are new covers, but these are the vibe. This is the moment. And so while it wasn't perfect for me, it was a sequel I struggled through a little bit. I gave it a 3.75, and I have very, very, very high hopes for the next book. The last book that I read this month was The Crash by Frida McFadden. I will say you probably should look up trigger warnings around pregnancy in this book and also maybe some sexual assault things. It did have some uncomfortable moments, but we're following Tegan, who is a 22-year-old expectant mother. She doesn't have much going for her. The nature of how she got pregnant is very traumatic, and that's kind of where the trigger warnings come in. But she doesn't have much to her name, so she is setting off in her car to go visit her brother before her baby is born, and she has to drive through a snowstorm to get there. Unfortunately, she does crash. That's why it's called The Crash. She breaks her ankle in the crash. She's also so pregnant, so she doesn't have much autonomy in what she's able to do or able to rescue herself or anything like that. She is rescued by this husband and wife and taken into their home. They have a hospital bed in their basement from when they were caring for the wife's mother, Polly's mother, and this is where Tegan is kept. And at first it kind of seems like it could be a good situation. She has a safe place to stay for the night. She has a comfortable bed. She has people taking care of her and giving her food. But eventually she starts to notice that they are not calling the hospital. They are not calling the ambulance. They are not making an attempt to get Tegan out of their home. And they might have sinister reasons for keeping her there. So this is both kind of like a hostage story and an escape story, but also it's so extra anxiety inducing because Tegan is pregnant and has a broken ankle and like can't move. Parts of the story were very thrilling and gave you like that anxiety you expect to get in a thriller. Parts of this story were a little bit boring and dragged. I think if you like Frida McFadden, it's just another fun Frida McFadden to read. If you want a thriller that is going to give you literary merit and really deep character exploration, maybe skip this one. It was a middle of the road book for me and I gave it a 3. So while this month was not the most exciting reading month I've ever had, I'm proud of myself for sticking to my goals, not buying a book, enjoying the books I decided to keep reading, and definitely found some series that I am invested in and want to continue reading in the future. And if you just want to be here and leave an emoji in the comments, leave me any kind of plant emoji. If you're interested in supporting my channel in any way, I have all of my Patreon and my social media links down below. I'd love to be friends with you in other places on the internet too. I'm also leaving all of the Escape the Readathon information down below because it's not too late to join. You should definitely join Team Podcasters and hang out with me in Discord. And I will see you guys in another video very soon. Bye guys.